annual official Tom Petty Festival, November 7th through 9th, featuring Jacob Dylan and the Wallflowers. Details at visitgainesville.com/Tom Petty. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and on today's First Coast Connect, it's the biggest stories of the week. A plan to sell the district school board building falls apart over concerns about transparency, and conversation devolves over Charlie Kirk T-shirts. The city's successor to the Skyway retains its legacy of limited ridership. The city council plans to alter one of the foundational legal supports of consolidation, and a ban on rainbow crosswalks sparks a flood of color in 5 Points. We'll talk about all that and more with our panel of journalists on our Friday Week in Review. Later, the fruits of the Jacksonville 48-hour film project hit the big screen. Join the conversation. Give us a call on air at 904-549-2937 or email questions or comments to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Israel's military says the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has gone into effect. The Israeli military says it has pulled troops back in Gaza to areas set out in the agreement. Hamas is now supposed to start releasing hostages. NPR's Daniel Estrin says after 2 years of conflict, some people hope the war is coming to an end.
We've seen ceasefire efforts fall through again and again. We've seen how Hamas has fought till the last man, no matter how many civilians were killed and how much Gaza was destroyed. We have seen Israel's leadership thwart ceasefire efforts repeatedly. We've seen how prolonged war has served Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's political survival. And yet, it is incredible for me to say this, but for the first time, people here really are giving themselves permission to hope.
NPR's Daniel Estrin reporting. Russian airstrikes in Ukraine overnight killed a child and injured more than 20 people. The attacks appeared to target Ukraine's energy system. NPR's Joanna Kakissis reports from Kyiv the attacks left parts of Ukraine without power and running water.
Ukraine's Air Force says Russia attacked using more than 460 drones and 32 cruise and ballistic missiles. Air defense teams tried to shoot them down before they hit. NPR heard loud explosions in central Kyiv. In the southeastern city of Zaporizhia, the strikes killed a 7-year-old boy. DTEK, Ukraine's largest private energy supplier, said several power stations were damaged and a worker injured. DTEK said Russia has struck power stations more than 200 times since the full-scale invasion in 2022. Russian forces intensify airstrikes on Ukraine's power grid every winter. Joanna Kakissis, NPR News, Kyiv.
The Trump administration has claimed that assaults on ICE officers are up 1,000%, but administration officials have not furnished any data or proof of this. Colorado Public Radio's Allison Sherry reports that a review of federal court filings doesn't show this either.
The administration has not only claimed an eye-popping increase on assaults on federal immigration officers, but they've also assured the public that anyone who assaults an officer will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Colorado Public Radio looked nationally at federal court charges for assaults on federal officers and have seen an increase since Trump took office. Roughly 25% more cases have been filed against people for assaulting an ICE officer. A lot of those charges come from cities that have seen increased immigration enforcement, including Los Angeles. The administration has not commented, though, on how or where they're coming up with the 1,000%. For NPR News, I'm Allison Sherry in Denver.
This is NPR.
Good morning. You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Stephen Ponson. It is now 9:04. Peg-Leg Pete no longer stands outside the Amelia Island Welcome Center in Fernandina Beach. After 50 years at its post, the statue has deteriorated and is no longer considered safe. It was moved to the Amelia Island Museum of History. WJCT News 89.9's Dan Scanlon has more.
City crews and Fernandina Pirates Club volunteers removed Peg-Leg Pete early Thursday for the 3-block trip to the museum on South 3rd Street. A photograph on the city's Facebook page shows the statue with its cracked and faded paint standing in front of the museum because, at 600 pounds, it's too big to fit inside. Meanwhile, the museum confirms that there are indeed cremated human remains inside Peg-Leg Pete that are believed to be those of longtime Fernandina Pirates Club member Paul Matthews Jr., who died back in 2007. It remains a puzzle exactly how some of the ashes got mixed with the material used to repair one of Pete's legs a few years ago. All the city of Fernandina Beach will say is that the cremains have not been touched. Dan Scanlon, WJCT News 89.9.
As for what happens next, the City Commission is said to be considering its options. We'll have windy conditions and periods of heavy rain throughout the day here along the I-95 corridor. And in St. Augustine this morning, they've been getting hammered with rainfall. And the National Weather Service office in Jacksonville has actually issued a aerial flood advisory for minor flooding in low-lying areas and poor drainage areas. That's going to be in place until 9:30 this morning. Temperatures will reach the 70s area-wide today.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Lilly Endowment, a private foundation supporting NPR's coverage of religion and spirituality, and Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Opinions expressed on the First Coast Connect Week in Review are those of our panelists and do not reflect the views of WJCT News 89.9.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and it's Friday, which means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. Among our topics, concerns about transparency, scuttle a deal to sell DCPS headquarters. School board members tussle over Charlie Kirk tribute T-shirts. A driverless transportation system remains largely riderless. A major change to city policy could limit the influence of the city attorney. And 5 Points gets even more colorful after the state bans rainbow crosswalks. To talk about all that and more, I am joined by David Bauerlein, Metro reporter at the Florida Times-Union. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Ann.
Christina Burgess, reporter at First Coast News. Christina, welcome back.
Good morning, Ann. Happy to be here.
Megan Malacote, education reporter at Jacksonville Today. Hi, Megan.
Good morning, Ann.
And Jack Webb, attorney and former Jacksonville City Council president. Hey, Jack.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Ann.
Thanks for being here. Megan, quite a school board meeting this week. We'll get to the sizzle, but let's start with the stakes. So the district backed away what seemed like kind of a done deal to sell its headquarters and to buy a new location. What happened?
Well, it did seem like kind of a done deal, although leading up to the meeting, some of the board members had expressed some concerns and various things. But what happened at the meeting on Tuesday was essentially that many board members decided they would have liked to have seen all of the offers, or at least a larger portion of the offers that the district received. And after a fairly long discussion, they ended up voting down the idea to purchase the building. And then because of that, or the idea to sell the building, and then because of that, they also voted down the purchase of the new building because it didn't want to have two buildings.
And it's probably worth, noting that the concerns that they had were the concerns that you raised in your reporting, which was, does the school board know about all of these offers? Do they know how much they were for? Was there transparency in the process? All of that kind of came out of the reporting that you did because you were trying to find that very information yourself and discovered there wasn't a lot of transparency in that process, at least initially.
Right. So we requested all of the offers as a public record. That felt like a pretty standard request to me at first. But they turned it down. And so then we had to go back to the general counsel's office a couple of times. And eventually we were able to get all of the records and found that one of the concerns about the sale of the building was that the company that had offered to buy it, Fleet Landing, had structured the deal in a split payment. And so it was $20 million, but it was what was it,
It was like almost 13 million,
13 up front and
and
then
then another seven.
seven
or
later,
so.
yeah, 3 years later. And so that, of course, if you start doing the math on that, raises other questions, because if you're not getting paid for your entire building now, and they had structured it so that there would be no interest received during that 3-year period while waiting for the remainder of the payment, it in effect begins to cost the district money as well. And so through the public records request from all the records that we received, we learned that there had been several other, not as high as that one, but other ones that seemed like they might have been worth considering because of the questions that had come up about the $20 million offer.
It sounded like at the board meeting there was even still offers kind of trickling in. Is that right?
Right. And I haven't received that offer yet, because that offer came in, I think, after we had published the rest of the offers.
Was that the Chase Properties offer?
There was Chase had offered a series of offers that they negotiated up to. Their highest offer had been $15 million leading up to it.
That's
but then
interesting.
when the rest of the news came out, I think they've upped their final offer to 17.2 now.
Jack.
Yeah, I find that really interesting. When you cover the story, great job, by the way. But the first thing that jumped out at me was, whoa, what's going on here? You're bringing these contracts, you're making a recommendation to the full board. I mean, who's behind the scenes here? Who negotiated? Where's the RFP? And when I saw Chase, I'm like, I'm checking on this stuff, and I'm digging into it yesterday. Chase, who's that? Oh, yeah, that's Mike Belanke.
Right.
That's Mike Belanke. Oh, yeah, Mike Belanke, Healthy Town, right? Right, Peter Rummel, Healthy Town, JEA incinerator site. Okay. Oh, what's going on here? Obviously, so this morning I went
Well,
back.
we should explain. I mean, the JEA former incinerator site is next to the school board building.
Absolutely.
Healthy Town is the original name for a development that was going to be there. It's since changed its name to River something.
Something, yeah. I don't even know what the status
Explain
is.
who Belanke is and what his role
Mike
is.
Belanke is a long, well-established, well-respected real estate developer here in Jacksonville. He's done a lot of work on South Bank, on the towers. Those were his projects, I believe, in large part. And he has been an advocate, a strong advocate for redevelopment of those parcels in addition to the whole Kings Avenue sector. He's an interesting guy. But, yeah, so Mike, I dug in this morning and I found a 2014 story from the Daily Record, and it talked about Mike making a proposal suggesting that there be a roll-up of the two properties. So it seems to me that, I don't know, if I'm the administration, I'm getting the general counsel's office together with the JEA and the school board, say, hey, let's do a joint RFP on total redevelopment of this project or this property and see what we can come up with.
I mean, you could see why they'd be interested in the adjacent property, its future. Not everybody, Christina, was crazy about the idea that the lead bidder, as presented by the superintendent, was Fleet Landing, which is a retirement, senior living facility. There wasn't 100% clarity whether, as a nonprofit, they would be taxed at the same level as perhaps a different redeveloper of that property would be, or whether, I think April Carney, the school board member, was saying she didn't know if that was really the highest and best use for this valuable riverfront property.
Yeah, and I know, just starting off with April Carney, she was a board member that was vocal about that and also vocal about wanting to see the other 3 bids. That was something we kept hearing her say quite a bit. Daryl Willie and Cindy Pearson in particular were 2 board members who I feel like even at past meetings, we were already hearing their thoughts and how they were feeling and their stance on selling and purchasing this. And one thing that always stood out to me when both of these board members would talk would be how they were also thinking about the staff in the buildings and the families and students that need to try to get access to wherever the new location will be. That was something that we kept hearing. It was something that I would hear from parents who I would speak with before and after meetings. And they were like, where it's at right now is good because it's in a location. Wherever it goes to next, let's also factor these same principles in that we've been
and we actually heard from Daryl Willie, who had raised those concerns. Is this central location being moved to the south side going to impact people, particularly families that live north and west of the city? And he sort of expressed surprise at the meeting, saying, "Oh, well, all of a sudden, kind of everybody's on my side," which is a weird, it was a turnabout.
Yeah, he did, especially when you started. You can tell at a good point what direction everyone was kind of going in, and everyone's sentiments. But he did say that, and that was a little bit funny. But he did point that out.
Yeah, David Bauerlein. I mean, give us some context for this, because this is not the first time that the the school board has tried to or thought about selling this building. In fact, right before the current superintendent took this job, they'd sort of wrapped up this 4-year failed process to do the very same thing.
Yeah, there's long been a desire of downtown development people to, quote, get government off the waterfront and put other development on it that'll be residential, retail, all that kind of stuff. And so this has been going on over years and years and years. And there was a previous plan to look at actually keeping the building downtown, and they looked at different ways to do that, had several offers, did through the request for proposals, eventually decided none of them really worked the way they wanted them to work. They might have had some risks. And so they kind of shelved the idea, and then it kind of all came back. So I don't think this is the final word. I would be surprised if we don't hear more about this. But, I think the point about wanting to see all the offers seems really relevant because, the Fleet Landing deal seemed to have going for it the most, that it had the most money that the district could get through this transaction. But, to Christina's point, they were also hearing from staff and parents and families and students that, look, if you move the headquarters over to the south side, that makes it less convenient. It puts it out of reach. We got to go through traffic to get there. Maybe there's a trade-off where there's a downtown offer that doesn't provide as much money, but it satisfies some of those complaints. So, then you have the entire thing in front of you in terms of making that big decision and that big call.
Well, we did learn through getting all the offers that they had an option or an offer from Blanky to swap the 1701 Prudential for the Sudeth building, which is like a mile away, perhaps.
Kind of by Mosh.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And get $3.5 million at close. And so it, and I don't know that building would suit their needs or not, but we'd learned that the superintendent had toured it, but the board had not toured it. I don't believe that the board knew about that option as well. And so because of all of the conversation around, can we keep it downtown? It would have been interesting to see that explored. And especially then when you start doing the math on if $20 million is advantageous.
If you're just joining us, I'm talking to David Bauerlein, Christina Burgess, Megan Malacote, and Jack Webb about the week's top headlines. You can join the conversation by calling 904-549-2937 or emailing firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can, of course, watch our program live stream now on Facebook and the WJCT YouTube channel. Megan, I want to ask you just a little bit about the politics of this. There were offers that weren't initially disclosed to the board. The board expressed concerns about that at these meetings. It seemed like it was really kind of the first moment that this new superintendent has really kind of had a kind of a fail with this board, that they have turned down something that he championed. This was his choice. And he issued sort of an anodyne statement afterwards saying, we appreciate the input that we've received. What's next for the superintendent? Do you think that this is a political, turning point in any way?
Well, I think he's been very careful to, I don't know if distance himself from it is the right way to phrase it, but in that he's said many, many times during these conversations that you asked me to come up with a plan to sell the building. Here's the plan that, that works right now. If you like it, great. If you don't, okay, then I'll just, take a right turn and something, and legislate differently or not legislate, but, administer differently the next day.
He's not a fan of the building.
He doesn't seem to be a fan of the building, though.
Yeah.
He doesn't.
I mean, I guess a lot of people that work there say that they're, it is
pretty
aging.
decrepit.
Right.
Yeah.
It was one of the first things he did in bringing in, he brought the same real estate consultant that he'd used in Lee County up here to work. The Trinity Commercial Group is the same group that he worked with down there. So it was, and even that RFP process is kind of interesting that they received 2 bids to be that, to be the real estate
broker, sort of, yeah.
One from this not local company and another one from a local company. I probably would have perhaps expected more bids for such a lucrative thing. But they like the arrangement that they've made with TCG because they get paid only upon the sale of real estate. They're not having to pay them a fee for the additional work that they're doing to.
It's a 5-year contract
It's
that
a 5-year contract.
they signed with Trinity. So I mean,
Right.
I guess this will continue. Yes.
It will continue. I don't know that it will end in the sale of the headquarters building, but they're also working with them to sell off some of the surplus properties from closed schools. And so
All right.
forth.
I want to shift a little bit to talk about a different set of circumstances at the school board. This was kind of more just nakedly political. There was a conversation about a teacher that's been removed from Douglas Anderson because of comments made on social media. And then there was also this issue of school board members wearing these pink Charlie Kirk tribute T-shirts that raised a lot of ire for some people in the audience. And that was something that you covered extensively, Christina.
Yeah, and for Tuesday's meeting, just starting off, there was a rally that happened an hour before the meeting for this teacher, Hope McMath, that teaches at Douglas Anderson. And so that already was kind of setting a tone for kind of, I want to say, how the meeting was going to go. And Hope McMath herself, she was there outside at the rally as people were chanting. They were standing in support of her. Once we ended up going inside about an hour later for the meeting to start, and started as normal, we go into public comment. We had, I want to say, about 73 speakers.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and normally when that is read, everyone does the
Oh, here we go.
You can hear the sound effects. So that kind of also set another tone. And so I mean, normally with any school board meeting or any meeting that you're covering and there's public comment, people are going to be very expressive. They're going to let you know how they're feeling. And the school board's going to feel how they're feeling. Us in the crowd are going to see how it's going. And so even before public comment was when it was brought to kind of our attention that these some school board members, including the board chair, did have on shirts that said, "This is the turning point." The shirts were acknowledged at the beginning. I know initially just for their pink color because it was Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so it was established that, we're wearing pink to stand in solidarity with that. And then I want to say maybe minutes later was when we, noticed what is being written on them. And then that's when during public comment, we heard some parents who were very vocal towards the board chair and the other members that also had on these shirts. And, some words that we heard where they were saying this is inappropriate. Why do this? And then later on at the end of the meeting, the members who are in the shirts, they did speak about Charlie Kirk in particular and who he was, and, their stance. And then the following day, I followed up and I called the board chair and just got more information on the shirts. And, she did inform me that after watching his memorial, she purchased the shirts, reached out to superintendent and any other members who maybe wanted a shirt as well. And I think that's why we saw that there were several other members that also had on these shirts. And I also followed up with parents the next day just to kind of get the grand scope of things. When you're in the meeting, it's so much happening. So the next day is why I followed up on it.
Yeah.
Because I could tell in the meeting just how everyone was feeling. And so
It was heated.
It was heated.
We have a soundbite from a woman who spoke during the public comment who expressed, kind of one side of this. Let's take a listen.
The shirts on you right now are inappropriate and should not be allowed to be on public television as our president of our school board. That is absolutely disgusting.
So that was, her view, Christina, but the board engaged in some cases really vociferously on this issue, including kind of an exchange that April Carney had with someone in the audience.
Yes.
I mean, it was kind of a shouting match.
Yeah.
And people were removed.
It was, yeah. It was a shouting match. Again, this happened near the end of the meeting, so not as many people are still in there, but there are still parents, there are still community members that are still seated in those seats. And it was in the portion where April Carney was just speaking to, again, who Charlie Kirk was for her. And this is when the parent kind of was yelling out how they were disagreeing with Carney's statements. And yeah, it did begin to get become a yelling match pretty quick.
Jack.
Yeah, I'd like to take a legal stab at this thing. All right, so what you're telling me is that you've got a teacher, McMath, what a great name for a teacher, by the way, who has been placed
She teaches art, but yeah, it's a good name.
It's a great name. How could you do that? In any event, you've got this woman who is been placed in indefinite professional purgatory pending a board investigation, what clearly was protected speech. Again, just because she's in a public, as the U.S. Supreme Court has said, just because you're a public employee doesn't mean you totally lose your First Amendment protections. Okay, there are certain hoops you have to jump through, but I went back and I reviewed the school board's position or their policy with regards to social media usage, and I think it's overbroad. I think it constitutes a prior restraint, which would be struck down by the courts. But that said, you put this woman again, she was posting on nothing to do with school board matters. But my understanding is that she was posting on a private social media platform, her own.
Not private, but personal.
Personal. That's what I meant. I'm sorry. Thank you. Wrong P word. Yeah, on a personal social media platform on issues relating to Jacksonville budget, Jacksonville City Council, not school board issues. Yet she's deemed that's not protected speech. Yet you got school board members who are wearing Charlie Kirk shirts at a public meeting, which may be protected, but you can't have both. You can't have both.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, in terms of, this is not just waiting for the school board to act. The Florida Education Commissioner has filed now, the day after this meeting, filed an administrative complaint against Hope Big Math, who we should say is, well known in the community. She used to run the Commerce. She's kind of a big social justice activist in addition to being a teacher. But he cited 2 posts, one that referenced Charlie Kirk and one that depicted some sort of representation of the President of the United States. And so this recommendation for sanction, essentially, on her license as a teacher cites a couple of statutes that he says that she's violated, including gross immorality or moral turpitude, personal conduct that seriously reduces a person's effectiveness as an employee of the district, and violating principles of professional conduct. And then also cited 2 rules that she has allegedly violated, including failing to make reasonable effort to protect a student from conditions harmful to learning, or failing to take reasonable precautions to distinguish between personal views and those of an educational institution. So those are what has now been put out there as, Megan, a recommendation that some action be taken against her.
Right. So there's a couple of interesting things that stand out to me about this. The first is that during the consent agenda in this same meeting on Tuesday, the board passed a settlement with Thomas Caggiano, the teacher who was disciplined for his social media posts, and then in an appeal process, I believe, if I remember correctly, that they came back and said, well, you can't hold him responsible for his personal social media. That's speech outside the classroom.
How much was that settlement?
They have not
disclosed.
They've not disclosed
Really?
the details, right?
Okay.
Of course,
Public records request.
I have
records
sent it in a couple
requested.
weeks ago,
Yeah.
but so we don't know the details of that settlement. But the timing for that to be the same day as the Hope McMath protest, it did. I mean, the irony kind of stands out to me, and I don't know enough details about that settlement for sure, but I do know at least what we do know publicly about that case. It seems to be relevant here.
Yeah.
The other thing that stands out is that a couple of months ago, several months ago now, when the board was debating these policies about how teachers and staff and employees could behave on social media and rewrote the policies, there was some outcry from the community to hold the board to the same standard, because the policy doesn't say that the board is held to the same standard as these employees. And so what they decided in the end was that the board is not held to the same policies because they are not employees. They're in the same sense as all of the other staff. They're elected. And so my understanding of this, and I talked through it with the policy director this week, is that that the board's actions, if somebody is upset by them, are regulated through the state ethics commission. And so whereas a teacher might be reprimanded for wearing a t-shirt with a political slogan, we have examples of that in the recent past as well, the board, you'd have to take your complaint to a state ethics commission, who right now includes Moms for Liberty founder Tina, I forget how to pronounce her last name, but
yeah. Okay. So the makeup of that board might determine the success of that complaint. Let's take a call from Sally in Springfield. Good morning, Sally. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. Even if a teacher and the school board both have to answer to different entities, they need to pick one code of ethics. If a teacher is disciplined for an after-hours post, but the school board gets to wear the same topic, the same opinion, opposing opinion in an official meeting, that doesn't look good to the general public. They just need to pick one or the other.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. I do want to hear from another side in that conversation during the public comment portion of the school board meeting. Someone who, basically was there to oppose or to speak against what Hope McMath had posted on her social media. Let's listen to that.
Tonight, you're going to hear speakers focus on freedom of speech. The two questions the board should be asking this district is, how did this person get hired? And is a teacher excusing an assassination as karma fit to teach in our schools?
And so, David, that's referencing one of the posts that Hope McMath is said to have made, saying that, based on Charlie Kirk's comments in the past, that she was saying that this was kind of I think karma is the word that she used.
Yeah, I think throughout this whole thing on Charlie Kirk, there's two ways to look at Charlie Kirk. One is Charlie Kirk, a victim of violence for expressing his views. And I think, so that's one frame of reference. And if someone excuses that, should that have consequences for their ability to teach? Because they would be viewed by some students as somehow being supportive of this violent act. And the other part is Charlie Kirk, the podcaster, who took a lot of very specific political views that a lot of people disagree with and a lot of people agree with. I mean, he was not somebody who was a polarizing figure in some ways, and is definitely part of the conservative movement. He was a political activist in that standpoint. So, if you wear a shirt saying this is the turning point, is that because you are opposed to gun violence being used to take the life of somebody because you disagree with their political speech? Or are you taking the position that wearing this shirt says, I agree as a representative of this district with his political views? And, and that's been the difficulty, I think, in terms of maybe covering it to some extent, but also, is Hope McMath potentially being forced to lose her teaching license because she somehow excused an act of political violence or found some justification for it? Or is she being forced out because she opposes Charlie Kirk's political views?
Yeah.
And there it's, what's protected speech, especially if you're in a position where you are in a classroom where if families or students see your posts, does that then create issues for them in terms of saying, I have problems with this person being the one who's teaching my 14-year-old about art history?
Sure. There's a lot more politics in the classroom, Jack.
A lot more politics. It doesn't change the law, though. The point is, was she speaking as an employee, as a citizen, and whether or not the speech, the matters that she was talking about, was a matter of public concern. That is the question, the threshold question. Again, I think clear whether or not you agree with it, whether or not you consider odious and ugly, I don't know. But the bottom line is, would it be deemed to be protected speech? My position is yes, given the inconsistency, the apparent hypocrisy between application of First Amendment principles between the board and employee. I think that raises problems for Duval County's school system in court. And moreover, I think if I'm the attorney, I'm not representing her, but am I gonna go after this policy? Because here's the issue: the policy states that even if you are acting as a private citizen engaged in protected speech, you have to what? You have to disclaim that you are not speaking on behalf of the Duval County public system. Or if it's private speech, why would you have to do that in the first place? That's going to be an issue that's going to be litigated.
And I think the complaint against Hope McMath, it does not, as far as I've seen, say that she made any statements in the classroom that are being cited as grounds for her being disciplined.
Right. I want to add also, you saying students even classroom, we heard from some of her former students and current students during the meeting, which gave us, I think, that viewpoint into class with Hope McMath as a teacher. Her current student hit on the fact that they're in a classroom, they're not able to keep getting the instructional that she was giving them and learn the art that she was teaching them, and they were doing packets, and it just felt like, where's our teacher? And then a former
in
student
her absence.
In her absence. And that was something that parents were telling me. So to hear the actual student in the desk, their firsthand experience, because a lot of times at these meetings, we're hearing the back and forth, but everyone's like, what are we going to do for the students? Even her former students noted that her public opinion didn't seep into the classroom when they were there.
We have a message from Brenda on Facebook saying most schools don't even allow students to wear controversial T-shirts or clothing. We have a call from Linda in Mandarin. Good morning, Linda. Go ahead.
Yes, this is sometimes I wake up and I feel like I'm in like the Twilight Zone with what's happening in 25. We have school board people who are getting a salary from tax dollars that basically are yelling at constituents because they're not adhering to the school board policy, so they're saying they're above their own law. But with students, when you have legislators locally and at national level calling out people, defaming people, but you want to hold a teacher on a social media platform to a different standard, we're just in dystopia right now. We understand that our First Amendment rights are under assault, and they're going to make us as Americans litigate our right that we already have under the Constitution. So I hope we have some pro bono attorneys out there that want to make a big name for themselves, because we should crush this right here, because they're getting away with it in Washington, and the little locals want to bring it to Florida in Jacksonville to show that they're in line. It's just atrocious.
Linda, thanks a lot. Megan.
I think it's important to know as the community that there are two investigations happening here of Hope McMath and probably others as well. That there's a district level investigation and there's a state level investigation. At a workshop a few weeks ago, the superintendent referred to that there would be representatives from the state here locally in the district to review these teachers who had been charged with making social media comments. And as we learned later, then Hope McMath was one of those. And through my reporting, I have learned that the state was actually at Douglas Anderson about 3 weeks ago, to interview. I think they interviewed maybe 15 people or more about Hope McMath.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Wow. And
colleagues?
Students, colleagues. Yep. And so the state's investigation and the district's investigation are separate. So the state has the power to revoke her license. The district, of course, would be more of a local HR kind of situation. And they may not lead to the same things, but it's also a very unusual angle for the state to take to be involved in something like this so soon. Typically in the disciplinary process, the district would refer the case to the state, and then the state would take...
If their investigation told them to.
If their investigation told them to, which you could make an argument that this one wouldn't necessarily. Maybe it would. And then the state, after some length of time, because it's a bureaucratic process, would then perhaps investigate, but they wouldn't typically come locally and set up shop in a school and
sure, that's a different footprint.
So it's very different.
Yeah. All right. We've got a call from Ed on the west side. Good morning, Ed. Go ahead.
Good morning. First of all, I really am not in favor of anybody on the school board officially while wearing any controversial anything. I don't care if it's pro-choice, pro-life, BLM, All Life Matters, anything that's controversial, that's outside. They're not an advertisement channel, these people in the school board. However, the outrage or the complaint about this particular T-shirt that we're talking about her using the word karma. My question is back to the George Floyd. Somebody would have said the exact same words using karma for what happened to George Floyd. After all, he had a long history of violent criminal activity. Everybody would be very upset. You can't have it both ways. People were fired. People were thrown out of their positions because of the controversy. They say anything negative about BLM or, the COVID vaccine. Let's not forget, people were literally fired if they opposed the COVID vaccine.
And thank you. And I appreciate those comments. It's really kind of hard to hear you with some background noise, but I think his point is that if somebody had said something similar about George Floyd, or it had, kind of been suggesting that was, karma, that would have been, the reaction would have been similar outrage.
Tit for tat is not a constitutional concept, okay? Just because one thing is wrong doesn't make the other one right, okay? So if someone lost their job because of that, then that's likewise most likely unconstitutional as well.
Sure. I mean, we know that the Caggiano case was very much sort of the other side of the equation in terms of, being an equal opportunity offender by what he was posting. It was
Mhm.
not something that, kind of not in Hope McMath's wheelhouse, so to speak. But I do want to move on now because David, you've done some great reporting on the new JTA sort of successor to the Skyway. It is theoretically eventually going to be a driverless automated transportation system. Right now, it's kind of shuttling up and down Bay Street. But you took a close look at it to see, where it is right now, just sort of, where at this stage we are in terms of ridership. What did you find?
I found that you're most likely not going to have anybody else riding it with you if you just get in on a random stop during the day. This system is set up to go on a 3.5-mile loop, mainly down Bay Street and downtown between the office towers of the North Bank and the sports complex. It started off free for 3 months. It has some novelty, right? I mean, hey, this is a driverless shuttle. It seems like that would attract people to jump on it too. So I think it started off out of the gate really slowly. We got 2 months of data, ridership figures, and it averaged out to about 12 riders per hour. That means really most of these shuttles are running without anybody on it. Dan Scanlon with WJCT then did a follow-up, and it looks like the third month of ridership dropped off even more. So it's not gaining ridership. It's not like people are saying, oh, I've ridden it, I'm going to keep using it. And now you get to this point where now it's going to be $1.75 fare to pay for it.
Not free.
So it's not free anymore. What does it tell us? I mean, it tells us once again that mass transit is very difficult in this city. People much prefer to use their cars. And I think it does raise some questions about this idea that the whole idea behind JTA and taking the Skyway and converting it so that these rubber-tired vehicles can go on the Skyway as well as the streets is that the whole problem with the Skyway has simply been it just doesn't go enough places. And if you extend it out, then you're going to see the ridership. Then it's going to come. Well, this would be the first leg added to it, and it's not connected to the Skyway, but it runs by the Skyway. We're not really seeing a lot of ridership on it. And the explanation, as always seems to be the case in Jacksonville with transit, is, well, just wait till more development comes. Then the ridership's going to pick up. Just wait till the whole 10-mile system is done. Then ridership's going to pick up. But, obviously what we've seen here is the reality on the ground where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And those shuttles are just going through downtown without anybody on them.
And the numbers that you found, you said that it looked as an average of 137 riders a day in that period when it was free, when it was a novelty. And I just want to point out that's in comparison to the ridership estimates that the Jacksonville Transportation Authority had put out as recently as well. I think it was actually probably a couple decades ago, but it said that the daily ridership would be between 1,000 and 3,500 a day by the year 2025 and would be close to maybe 4,000 by 2045. It's now saying they expect 280 people per day by 2035. So in 10 years, they think that somewhere north of 100 more people a day than what you found.
Yeah, they've had all different sorts of ridership projections and figures in terms of how many riders would be on it. And the projections are one thing, and maybe they turn out and don't. I think really the issue is we know now how many people are actually riding it. It's in operation. It's no longer projections, and it's very. There's not many people riding it, and so the question is always, well, that it's going to get better. It's going to get better. Just wait. I don't know. I mean, I think you have to sort of reassess that when you have actual facts and figures before you about how many people are riding it. I know the mayor was on and talked about how, it's too early to tell. And there's some truth to that. It is too early to tell. I mean, it's 3 months, but you have 3 months of ridership figures on a new shuttle that's got all this novelty involved, and it was free. And this is the turnout you had for it.
One of Donna Deegan's comments, Jack, when she was on this program earlier this week was that, Bay Street is torn up. We've got all of this stuff under construction, the stadium, Four Seasons. The road is not a good example of what's to come. And yet this is a project that is going to, in the end, cost hundreds of millions of dollars and basically is absorbing almost half, about 40% of the gas tax, the additional gas tax that the city council approved, which was, under the previous mayor. But that was, not insignificant. The city doubled its gas tax to pay for projects, and half of that doubling is going to fund, not quite, I should say 40% is estimated to go to this project.
That's a fair point. I mean, you give the mayor a hall pass. I mean, she's essentially given Nat Ford a hall pass, who's the CEO of the JTA, saying, all right, we've got problems downtown. We'll acknowledge the problems. So maybe, the ridership is not where it needs to be, but maybe it'll get there. But again, based on what I'm hearing from you guys, David, you're the workhorse on this story. But it doesn't look like we're anywhere near we're going to get, even if you pave Bay Street with gold, I don't think we're going to meet the earlier projections. And I'm not busting on the JTA board either. I mean, the JTA board is dependent upon their professional staff, their executive director, CEO, and the consultants that they bring in. So,
the JTA, just by definition, is going to be advancing mass transit projects. Like, it is going to advance that idea in a city that has shown to be fairly resistant to the concept. It's a huge city.
Yeah.
It's hard to service areas efficiently. I mean, we were talking about moving the school board building to the south side. There was one mom who went there and said it took her 5 hours on the bus to get there with all the transits that the transitions that it took.
Right. So we're not talking about real mass transit here. I mean, mass transit meaning what? The mass of people are going to use it? That's not correct. Mass transit being it's going to address massive areas. That's not working either. I mean, I think the money. Well, I will say this, deja vu all over again, as Yogi Berra said. Here we go again. It looks as if this new technology. Remember when the Skyway came in? That was all bells and whistles. That was new technology. We're the cutting edge. Seems like it's the same story this time around.
Yeah, I was saying Emily Turner of Action News has done quite a bit of reporting on this as well in terms of the whole system. The next step, the next phase is going to be the Skyway, which is the elevated structure downtown that these trains run around. And the idea is they're going to basically rebuild that system. I mean, they're going to take off the top of it, and then they're going to put in a new structure that will have wide enough areas for these rubber-tired vehicles to go on ramps that are going to be between the Skyway and the streets. And it's going to cost several $100 million. It's going to cost a lot of money to do this conversion. And after you spend all that money, it's going to go the same place it goes right now. It's not going to be,
Right.
And so I think, at some point you kind of go, well, what are we actually getting for all this investment? How many people are going to be riding it? And, is this really the best way to go forward with this to
The problem
build
is
this elevated?
it's a sunk cost at this point.
Right.
You've already invested the money.
We should say that right now it's not running, it only runs 7 to 7. It doesn't run at nighttime, which, might be a busier time for clubs. It doesn't run during Jaguar games. I do want to take a call briefly from Tiffany on the north side. Tiffany, if you can just sort of keep it short and sweet, please. Thank you.
Absolutely. I use Navi every 2 weeks. As a matter of fact, every other Wednesday. I am a commercial and residential cleaner. And so I get on Navi because it is cheaper for me to ride Navi from my apartment instead of getting in my car because parking would cost me more. It is quite, controversial right now if this Navi is really working. However, for me, because I also work downtown, granted, I only use it every 2 weeks, but it's actually working for me.
Excellent. Well, good to hear, Tiffany. I appreciate the input. I do want to just briefly touch on, very briefly, and David, I'm probably just going to have to lean on you for this, a possibility that the city will get rid of oversight for the school board with its current general counsel, that they might be able to hire, at least for some purposes, their own attorney.
Yeah, it looks like that's going to happen. I mean, city council looks like they'll support it. It then goes to the state legislature. It would change this longstanding provision in the city charter that basically says the school board, as a part of consolidated city government, is under the legal oversight of the Office of General Counsel for the city. So it's maybe it's a little bit wonky, a little bit kind of like, oh, wow, it's not something people wake up thinking about every day. But for 57 years, that's the way it's been in the city of Jacksonville. So it would be a change in terms of really making the Duval County School Board completely independent, in my view, from the city of Jacksonville.
Jack, good idea or bad idea?
Bad idea. Nip it in the bud. Fackler, go meet with the school board.
Fackler is the current general counsel.
Yeah, go meet with the school board. Say we're going to hire a real education lawyer, and then get with the Duval delegation and say, please don't support this J-bill. Thank you.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. David Bauerlein, Christina Burgess, Megan Malico, Jack Webb, thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, up next, the fruits of Jacksonville's 48-hour film project get their moment on the big screen.
Congaree and Pen, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpen.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Car accidents happen too often for your family to go unprotected. Uninsured motorist insurance. When you need it, will you have it?
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
I'm Ana Maria Sayer. Next time on Tiny Desk Radio. An hour of calming music with indie folk from the Innocence Mission. And the space princess herself, Ravina. Plus, Italian pianist and composer Ludovico Einaudi. That's next time on Tiny Desk Radio from NPR Music.
Tomorrow night at 7, here on WJCT News 89.9.
On the next Florida Roundup, shelling, part pastime, part obsession, searching for seashells in Florida.
For me, it was very much being able to be close with nature and to stop thinking.
A documentary examines seashelling on Sanibel Island before and after Hurricane Ian. Do you bring a bucket or mesh bag with you to the beach to comb through the shells? Do you shop and buy shells? Share your story. Email radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. Then join us Friday noon until 1.
The government shutdown moves into week 2. Next time on the Friday News Roundup, is there any sign of movement toward a budget deal? Also, the latest from Chicago as Texas National Guard troops arrive in that city. James Comey faces arraignment and big feelings over Bad Bunny. That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, whether you're a novice or a pro, the timeline for the 48-hour film project is the same. But now that the 2 days of chaos and creativity are over, participants can sit back and enjoy their work, and so can we. Here to tell us about the upcoming screenings of the film at WJCT Studios are Adam and Monique Madrid. They are the co-city producers of the Jack's 48-hour film project. Welcome back, you guys. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Yes.
So this is a national, it's actually a global event. Tell us a little bit about how it got started and how Jacksonville became a part of it.
All right. Well, it started here in Jacksonville in 2007, but it started in D.C. in 2001. It's the largest film competition in the world, and we were participants in it in 2007, and we won in 2014. Did a couple more years, and then the city producer stepped down. Yep, and then they asked us to run it, and we're like, I don't know if we want to run it, but here we are.
Here you are. Well, you guys are obviously a big part of the film community here. You also created and run the LOL Film Festival, which is, I think, the last time that we talked to you. But this concept is really interesting. So, as we said, you've got 48 hours. It starts on a Friday, and Monique, you basically are telling them, you have a prop that you must include in your film. There's a line that someone has to say, and then a character. Yeah. And so, first of all, tell us how that works. How do you get that information? How do you pass it? And then what happens immediately after?
So like they have, again, 48 hours. So on that Friday, just a few hours before, we get the line, the character, and the prop. So we don't have that much time before them, and we scramble to make sure we can have it to where they can see it visually. But they get it. They have to spin to get their genre, or like pick to get their genre, but
so
they don't know
get
that
to choose
either.
it.
Yeah. This year we did it with a shell because it's a nautical theme. But yeah, they have to select their genre too. So everything's from scratch, and then they're off to the races, and they have to make a film in 48 hours.
Wow. I
with
mean,
all that.
more than the inserting the prop and the line, it seems like if you were, a genre filmmaker, like if you've made documentaries and all of a sudden you have to make a horror flick, like that could be a pretty tough adjustment.
Yep, absolutely, and that's the challenge of it all. Obviously, is you don't know what you're filming until that kickoff event. And
do they have to have a cast ready to go too?
Normally, right?
Yeah, I mean, you think you have everything in line until you find out what you pull, and you're like, maybe I don't need 12 people. Maybe I can do this with 2. So actors have it a little rough. They have to figure it out and get on teams pretty quickly.
And so they get rolling on a Friday. They start scripting, and then Saturday is kind of a day to shoot primarily?
Right, yep.
If
And
they
then-
stick to schedule, Saturday's the day to shoot.
And then Sunday, what?
Edit. Yeah, so
Edit.
probably Saturday night to Sunday morning to Sunday day, you're editing the film, and no sleep. Literally just trying to get it in before 7:30 at Sunday.
Yeah,
Yep.
so they get it together, and then you've got this great collection of films, obviously running the gamut from, the sort of the level of the filmmaker, their experience, the participants, the actors, all of that. So you are grouping the screenings into a few different categories. Tell us where people can see them. And there's a much more detailed list, obviously, on your website, but just generally.
Yeah, WJCT Studios. So right here on Monday, the 13th, 14th, and the 15th, and then the best of our top 15 films. They'll be shown October 22nd here at WJCT Studios.
And there's like an award ceremony as well, right?
Yeah,
that
on the
recognizes
22nd.
Yeah, so that's gonna be a great thing because on that night, one of those films will be representing Jacksonville and going to Lisbon, Portugal at Filmapalooza, where they compete against the world and then get a chance to go to the Cannes Film Festival in France. So that's another great thing. And I know a lot of people at times are like, you can't make a great movie in 48 hours. It's like, well, technically, yes, we can. We have. Jacksonville has proven that we've had films that competed against the world. So,
right. I mean, winning is attainable. We had somebody
Mm-hmm.
from Jacksonville a few years ago that went to the Filmapalooza in Los Angeles at the time, and then they went and they did screen at Cannes.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
They were the grand champion. They beat everybody around the world. It was the number one film
and it was
around the world.
Jacksonville. And it was great to hear like a lot of city producers around the world saying, see how Jacksonville made the movie? That's how you make movies. And that was a great feeling because we have a lot of amazing talent in our city. So it's a great shout out to the Jacksonville filmmakers here.
And so, Adam, you're also now this first ever film production coordinator for the city of Jacksonville. We know that there was a recent city council agreed to fork over a big chunk of potentially up to $400,000 for a project that's going to screen here in Jacksonville. We don't know if it's a commercial or, I mean, perhaps but that's a big deal. We're moving in a different direction than we have been for years.
Absolutely. It's great to see that. Yeah, I mean, there was the thing there that we were possibly losing, funding, the city council, but luckily, it got voted and we got to keep funds and have money allocated for a project that's going to be coming up here. We are marketing Jacksonville in a big way. We once said obviously Jacksonville was the Hollywood before Hollywood, but it's like for me, it's like why don't we take it back? Why don't we become that place of making movies once again? And we have a lot of great feature films, commercials, music videos, everything happening here. But now we're getting more attention with what we're doing, what a lot of filmmakers are doing, and just being loud about it.
And a lot of great talent.
Yes.
And of course, if you want to find out more information, you can go to 48hourfilm.com/Jacksonville. Adam and Monique Madrid, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
All right. And that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you have comments or questions, you can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight or find our entire archive on your favorite podcast platform. First Coast Connect is produced by Stacey Bennett, and our associate producer is Isabella Casapow. Brady Corum manages our video and soundboards, and our theme music is performed by Club de Belugas. Join us Monday when we sit down with former Jacksonville mayor, who's no longer sitting on the sidelines, Lenny Curry. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. Florida Theater presents Sons of Maestro. The two brothers use their violins to interpret pop songs, reggae classics, and their own creations, accompanied by a DJ and a drummer. Friday, October 17th at 7 p.m. Information at floridatheater.com.